All right, let's begin. So, I had a great question last week in the question and answer meditation that I do every first Thursday. And I kind of just scratched the surface of it. And the question is basically, can you just talk about enlightenment? And I'll tell you, this is something that I could simultaneously talk about for hours, and then also just like not really talk about it at all because words don't really make any sense when we're talking about this idea. You can't. It's like what Lao Tzu said in the Tao Te Ching: "The Tao that can be named is not the eternal." If you can put words to it, it's the stuff of logic, and it's not, it's not real on a sense that is kind of beyond logic or beyond the mind. And that's what enlightenment is. It's beyond logic, it's beyond thinking. So I'll do my best here. And this is a perfect topic for a long meditation, because if you're going to get it, you got to stop talking and stop thinking and just meditate and just be. So one of the things that I thought of as soon as I was finished with that, answering that question, that I should have said this. There are, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, but there are different words that refer to what many people think of as being the same thing, but they're slightly different concepts. So in enlightenment, there is this idea of like a flash of enlightenment. This is like a eureka moment, like an aha, oh, I get it. And you may have experienced this in meditation or just in life. You have for surely experienced something like this. I remember the first time that I meditated, I had a tiny flash of just actually letting go of thoughts and just feeling the breath. And it probably lasted like a split second, but it felt really amazing. Not like I was excited in the moment. In the moment, it just felt like really just being a human being in the best possible sense, like just being a human being, not a human doing. It felt like doing that for the first time in my life. And then when I recognized it, then I got real excited. I was like, I'm the best meditator ever. I'm basically like the Buddha. Watch out, world. Here I come. And so all of that lasted that long. And then by the end of the meditation, I was curled up in a fetal position against the wall because I just was not able to sit still for that long. That was my first meditation, a roller coaster of emotions. But that flash is what is often referred to as a satori. So a satori is a Japanese term for this. And it basically means comprehension or understanding. It's like you've got it for a second. And then the feeling, that kind of experience, might likely disappear pretty quickly, but it still leaves you with this understanding. So for me, even though that meditation, the rest of it really sucked, I finished that meditation with an understanding of this is what could be. This is what, there is something beyond our normal experience of day-to-day life, our normal waking consciousness. There's something that is deeper and more profound to experience through meditation. So that was wonderful. And if that was it, and I never meditated again, I would have been changed, but just not by a lot. A shift in understanding is huge, it's crucial, but it is more how it kind of leads us into the rest of our practice and the rest of our life that really matters more. So the other term I'm going to refer to is a samadhi. Samadhi is a more long-lasting kind of thing. So it changes you in a way where you can't really go back to the old way of being. And it's beyond just understanding. Right? A satori, a flash experience is kind of one where it's like, oh, that was really cool. Maybe I'm going to try to get back to that. The samadhi is more like I am fundamentally changed in a way that lasts for the rest of my life. And that doesn't usually happen in a flash. It's more of a state of consciousness that we kind of eventually get to through practicing for longer, through longer meditations, through years and years of practice. And so this is more often what people think of when they think enlightenment. They think like, I am totally changed forever. And that is a way of looking at enlightenment. And then there are these kind of flashes of enlightenment that can kind of just keep us going on the road that we're on and keep us motivated, but also just give us those kind of permanent shifts in understanding how life and our minds work. Samadhi is the 8th step in the Eightfold Path in Buddhism, and it is a way of looking at it like, I've arrived, I'm there. And there are certainly different like stages of samadhi or different depths of enlightenment. But when people think of enlightenment, that's usually what they're thinking of. It's like, I am changed. I'm profoundly a different person. Yogananda, we have a picture of Paramahansa Yogananda on the front. And a way that he described samadhi was, I thought this was really beautiful when I just read this earlier today. He described samadhi as a soundless state of breathlessness, a blissful superconsciousness state in which a yogi perceives the identity of the individualized soul and the cosmic spirit. Wow. So I really like the first part the most. A soundless state of breathlessness. And I've heard this described sometimes like the moment when it happens in meditation is in the exhale, when you are completely just let go and there's like a pause there, and the pause might be a split second between the exhale finishing and the inhale starting. It might feel like an eternity if you really dive into that moment. And this breathlessness might not mean that you're actually not breathing, but you get the feeling behind that. And you have been breathless before. Like if you're just caught up in the moment of something, it's so overwhelming. And that is the kind of blissful state that is there for us if we are meditating and kind of allowing everything that's in the way to just disappear. So I heard this idea of enlightenment also once described as breaking the habit of ego identification. And that really kind of gets at the work behind this journey. So you'll get things that just happen in a flash, you can be changed, but breaking a habit does not most often happen in a flash. It most often happens with work, where you have this thing that you do as a habit and you've been doing it for a while. So now you have to do the other thing for longer and for more, intensity or whatever to get used to doing it this way. And it's just like when you come into class, and if somebody were to throw a punch at you the first time and nobody has taught you what to do and you haven't practiced it, your first response is something that looks like this. Ah! And that's not really helpful in self-defense. Closing your eyes doesn't make the punch disappear. Turning your head, you still get punched over here. Putting your hands up is great, but it's not really the best way to deal with it, right? So we sidestep, or we slip, or we duck, and we train ourselves out of the old way of doing it into a new, more beneficial way of doing it. Ego identification is necessary at some point in life. It keeps us alive. If you don't recognize that there is this kind of separate part of you, then it's very hard to set boundaries in relationships or in, work at life. It also is kind of hard to stay alive because you'll just walk into traffic because you're just like, I am one with the cars. But you don't want to be stuck in that, because what ego identification means is I'm separate from you. And I'm so separate from you that I'm unable to be sympathetic or understand what you're going through usually. It means that I'm so caught up with what's going on in my own little world that only exists in my head that I'm not really connected to reality. The ego is an illusion on some level. If we can only see life through the ego, we can only see ourselves as being a totally separate entity. That's just not real. And you don't have to look any further than science to understand this. We're all made of the same stuff, right? We are atoms and molecules, and we're made out of the same stuff, the same exact stuff as each other, and pretty similar to the same stuff that the mats and the air and the cars and all of the creation and the entire universe is made out of. So on some level, enlightenment is this ability to experience the oneness. And that's no small thing. To break the habit of only being able to identify as the ego and the separate self, the small self, that's going to take some doing. But it is possible. Just like breaking any habit is possible. If you put in the work and the time, we can eventually just not have that be our habitual way of seeing life and seeing ourselves. So now on a less, you kind of get that esoteric level of enlightenment, like why become enlightened? Because it helps us see reality. It helps us be in touch with like the true nature of the universe. But like, okay, that sounds nice, but like what's that going to do for me? If you're not so keen on just being connected to reality, it's going to make you happier. Just being in the present is of huge importance. If we cannot be present, we cannot be happy. Happiness doesn't exist in the future or in the past. Of course, if we are here now remembering something fond, that's great. If we're looking forward to something that's going to happen in the future, that's great, but that does not last. That is itself an illusion. So in the present moment is really where like the diamond of life, the jewel of life is right here. And it is beautiful and magical, and there's nothing else that we need. We're as human beings identifying as the ego, we're always searching for something else, for something more. We're on that treadmill of desire, always trying to get to the next biggest, best thing. The most valuable, incredible thing is just this breath in this moment. And if we can get there first intellectually and then experience it and then really kind of get it in our bones, and that's what a samadhi is, we're just effortlessly happy. That's bliss. There is nothing that we need. And that would be really nice, right? I wrote this word unperturbed or imperturbable. We are not perturbed. And this is another tall task, because life is just filled with things that can kind of knock us around and put us in a state that feels very difficult. And life can very often feel like we're just fighting against everything and everyone. It feels like we're constantly just trying to pick ourselves back up. But being enlightened or having a sense of what that is, even if it's just like a little bit, kind of allows us to let things just wash right off of our back. And, you know, things that maybe even just a couple months ago felt like the world is ending, and how could this person do this to me? I can't believe that this person cut me off. I feel like running them down and running them off the road, right? The worst possible thing that we can imagine now is just like, it's not that bad. And part of it is because we can identify with the other person. Like, one of my favorite games to play when somebody is a jerk on the freeway and they cut me off is for me to remember the last time that I cut somebody off, which is sometimes pretty recently. And I think, like, they must be in a really big hurry today because they have something really important. Maybe there's a woman giving birth in that car right now. So like, just let it go. That ability to let it go and just be in the present moment. This is it. This is where life is happening. So yeah, the last thing I wrote was kind of related to this idea of perceiving reality. It's like breaking out of the matrix, being totally present and connected to reality is like we're no longer imprisoned by our own, illusion. And this is often of our own making. We've convinced ourselves that this little world and these emotions that we have and these automatic reactions to things, like this is the only way to live life. It's totally false. So when we meditate, we're getting kind of a glimpse of this, and the longer and the deeper we go, the more likely we are to experience this kind of state. And like I said last week, try not to think of meditation as something where it's like binary. Very often people think of it like, I'm not enlightened, and then maybe I'll have this experience someday, and then the flip switches and I'm enlightened. And that's it. I'm perfect forever. I'm like Jesus or Buddha and I can do no wrong. It's unlikely that that's going to happen. What is likely to happen is there are kind of gradients. And as we practice, we get better at letting go of that habit of identifying as the ego. We get more and more in the present. We're just totally here now. And maybe that'll last for a little bit longer. So when you sit to meditate today, you might recognize that you have thoughts that creep up like real quickly. And then part of our job is to just let them go, be present, and try to hold on to that without being attached. You just allow yourself to be totally absorbed by the feeling of the breath. And then eventually the mind wanders, then you bring it back again. And there's nothing to accomplish here. If you're thinking of enlightenment as like a thing that I have to achieve someday, that's just the ego trying to get involved again. It's your ego trying to win enlightenment. It doesn't work that way. The harder you try to do it, the more it escapes you, right? The harder you try to chase around that cat to pet it, the more it's going to like hide and you won't be able to get to it. So you just sit and let it come to you. So let's practice. Sit comfortably. I'll go over details of posture. So I sit in seiza, kneeling, but you can certainly sit cross-legged as well. If your knees are not really sticking up, then this will work for you. If your knees are really sticking up past your hips, then your legs are going to fall asleep. The spine is straight, so you've got your hips not slouching this way, not overarching this direction, just a light kind of tucking up of the hips. Your shoulders roll back and relax, so we're not rigid and we're not overly tense. The chin is parallel to the ground. Your eyes are closed. And raise your eyes slightly to the level of the third eye, kind of the center of your forehead. Your raising of the gaze is important because it helps you not fall asleep during meditation. But it also is doing this very interesting thing where you're literally putting your attention on a physical space in your brain where there is no physical feeling. So when we raise the eyes and we focus on that point, like an inch or two inside the skull, and we got to do this without crossing the eyes, but if we are focusing our attention on that, then you're letting go of the aches and pains of the body, you're letting go of the itches and the kind of automatic desire to move. Because we need to stay very still in meditation. When you move, it's kind of like starting all over again. So with that position of your body and your eyes, let's do a couple of deep breaths together. We'll do this kind of to slowly wade into the meditation. Start with all the breath out. Breathe in through the nose. Let's hold it at the top for 3 seconds. Exhale, and then hold it at the bottom for 3 seconds. Just kind of lengthening the pause between the breaths. In, breathing from the belly. Hold it for a few seconds. Out. You can breathe out through the nose or the mouth, and then again hold it at the bottom for a few seconds. Inhale always through the nose, using the belly of the diaphragm. And then you can go at your own pace. After you hold it for a few seconds, you can let it go. And try to hold that pause at the bottom. If you feel like this is physically painful, you're straining the breath, and just relax. Maybe take an extra breath. Don't try to over inhale, over exhale, or hold for too long. It should feel like an easy breath. So in a second, we're going to let go of the manipulation of the breath and just allow the breath to do what it does. But tonight, as you're meditating, try to keep coming back to the awareness of that point at the third eye level inside your skull, and just allow the physical sensations of your body to disappear. You're probably going to be lightly aware of the breath. That's fine. Continue refocusing on that third eye center. So now let go of trying to fix the breath and just let it happen. When the mind wanders, bring it back to the breath and the third eye.